Ubisoft had a pretty bad 2021. Sure, it's not as bad as 2019, where they only launched Breakpoint, but still, their big titles last year like Far Cry 6 and Riders Republic did not set the world on fire. I hear no one talk about Riders Republic anymore, and where Far Cry 5 was the second biggest launch for Ubisoft ever, Far Cry 6 did fine, but has been dying out very quickly since, dropping from number 1 to 9 in the top 20 sales of the US, behind way smaller titles with also a little chance to get another boost, looking at the week post-launch. To put it in another perspective, Ubisoft's stock dropped from €87 at the highest point in 2021 to less than half of that today, and it hasn't been this low in a very long time. So one of the ways they plan to address this is by focusing on big IP beyond their own portfolio. They have been toying around with this with Brawlhalla that recently got Street Fighter characters, but also the Ninja Turtles and Kung Fu Panda have joined the roster. And now at the end of this year we get a big next-gen only Avatar open world game alongside the second movie. I really like the universe, and I think it's also exciting to see a Ubisoft fantasy open world game that doesn't have to be realistic or based on mythology for once. There will be many new Avatar movies, and instead of like launching a new game alongside each movie, the plan seems to be to just support the game that we will get in 2022 for the years to come. So Massive, the Swedish studio, is really busy because they also got another massive team that first did The Division 2 and is now full focus on a new story-driven open-world video game set in the Star Wars galaxy. And it's from a Xenier vehicle artist job posting, so totally expect some interesting vehicles we can use to hopefully explore the multiple planets. One of the things I like the most about the Division games is the amazing indoor but also outside areas that we get to shoot our way through. Like the world design and the environments always look stunning, so I really can't wait to see what they can do with the Star Wars universe. It's now been 1 year since the announcement, so a 2024 release at the earliest could be realistic. That would be then the same year as Assassin's Creed Infinity, looking at the fact that that also started proper development in 2021. Like, we actually had a lot of new announcements in 2021 for early in development projects. Next to Star Wars and Assassin's Creed Infinity, a Splinter Cell remake was also announced. This one will be linear though, focused on what the series is known for, and with this remake we are building a solid base for the future of Splinter Cell, according to Ubisoft. So while we did see Sam Fisher pop up in many Ubisoft games, he did not get its own proper game during the previous generation. Well, that will change on the PS5 and Xbox Series. Rumors suggest that Ubisoft might be looking at a Hitman model for a proper new Splinter Cell game. But first we get the remake, because really the Resident Evil and Final Fantasy VII remake successes are not going unnoticed. We of course see EA go back to Dead Space, Ubisoft doing Prince of Persia, and now Splinter Cell. And this all brings us a step closer to, I still think, the inevitable Assassin's Creed 1 remake. Interesting is, by the way, that the Splinter Cell remake will be running on the Snowdrop engine, which we know from The Division, but that will now also be used for Avatar and Star Wars. Like, I really think that Massive might become the golden goose for Ubisoft during this new generation with their engine, and also the fact that Avatar and especially the Star Wars game could be really big for them, or massive. So I would say that's totally an exciting part of Ubisoft's future, but there is of course way more going on. So let's look at everything we know about the future so far. If you like these big Sunday videos, then leaving a like on them would really help me out, and subscribe for more content like this if you haven't already. 80% of Ubisoft's investments are focused on significantly expanding its premium offering for the coming years. So that means that 20% is going towards their new free-to-play initiatives, which might not sound like a lot, but I would argue it's actually really big. Because we only got Brawlhalla as the real ongoing free-to-play game right now, while all the other free-to-play titles are still unreleased. And overall, free-to-play games of course require way less budget than a $60 game. So in 2022 we will finally see long-delayed free titles release. I played Roller Champions in 2019, it's still not out. I think though that The Division Heartland has the highest chance of being a success thanks to the IP and the the RPG focus could really set it apart, unlike just another battle royale. But yeah, we all know that if they really want a big success, they gotta bite the bullet on a Far Cry free-to-play title or an Assassin's Creed likely multiplayer-focused free-to-play game that will then live next to the single-player titles. I can see this going two ways. Maybe they go full Ghost of Tsushima Legends style co-op and lean more into the mythical side of Assassin's Creed, or I could see them try something like the Unity co-op again. I think both would be pretty cool, and as said in my previous Sunday video, I would not be surprised if we saw this game at least announced in 2022. But I really hope that Ubisoft sticks to the narrative focus for Assassin's Creed in general, and Infinity at least seems to do that. These past few years, it has once again been made clear that Assassin's Creed is the biggest thing that Ubisoft has going on for them right now. Sure, Rainbow Six Siege still has a big player base, but it totally seems to dwindle, and Ubisoft just cannot get people excited for Extraction, which is already coming out on January 20th. Ghost Recon, Division, Watch Dogs all had big moments during the previous generation, but are all now in far worse positions than they ever were before the release of their latest entry. Sure, I would argue that Valhalla was not better than Origins and Odyssey, but it did become the second highest grossing game in Ubisoft history. Like, the excitement at least is still there, and I'm pretty positive. I'm looking forward to the future of Valhalla. I think year 2 could be pretty cool. So Ubisoft is going back to something they previously did. They namely plan to come with meaningful content on Assassin's Creed every year. Paid content every year, as you know, solo and narrative. This is what they said during their most recent investor call. This does of course mean that we get a mainline game every year, like Dawn of Ragnarok would count as paid content in 2022, but where Assassin's Creed would sometimes have like years in between big titles, that is not really the plan anymore. There should be something to do with the brand every year, and they need it because, again, it's the biggest thing they got going. But the solo and narrative focus is totally not what they got planned for their other games. They noted that Riders Republic is really the kind of modern game that we want to create, with more social in them, multiplayer and social. That's the direction they want to head into as a company, and sure, we're seeing that with Skull and Bones, which should be a survival co-op PvPvE game in a big open world where you can encounter other players. The story might really take a back seat in that game. Sure, we haven't seen the new updated footage yet, which we will likely get around E3 this year, but I do think it will be a hard sell for full price if you got cheaper alternatives on the market already. I personally think that if they went for a single player, maybe with 2-player co-op, max, Black Flag style game, I think more people would be excited for it, but maybe I'm wrong, we will have to wait and see. Overall though, it seems like Ubisoft is having a hard time making people excited for their new properties, comparable to what we saw during the start of the PS4 and Xbox One generation, where we had Watch Dogs that sure did not live up to the hype, but they did put a big new IP on the market, and that game set day one sales records for Ubisoft, and it turned into Watch Dogs 2, which is still like a really cool game. Remember the insane excitement around The Division, the first one. It's still the biggest launch for Ubisoft ever. Them even For Honor, which still has a sizable player base, did really well when it came out. I mean, Ghost Recon Wildlands, that launched a month later, was totally something new for that franchise, and that was the best-selling game that month, competing against Horizon Zero Dawn and Zelda Breath of the Wild. Back then, Ubisoft knew what players wanted and how to get them excited for multiple of their games, but right now, the opposite seems true. They are really maybe more out of touch than ever. Look at XDefiant, which is a game we already have, a hero shooter, Call of Duty, slap the Tom Clancy name on it, and you got a brand new game. Like, why compete with Apex Legends and Warzone, especially after Hyperscape flopped? The dislikes on this speak volume, and that they also did on the Ghost Recon Battle Royale announcement, Frontline. Nobody wanted this, and Ubisoft was actually surprised by that, so they went back to the drawing board, delayed the test, and are now hopefully making a completely different game. Like, how do you not know that people don't want a battle royale? Like, You should know that as an owner of the franchise. And I overall feel bad for the Ghost Recon community, because they first had the short end of the stick with Breakpoint, because back then Ubisoft wanted all their games to be an RPG, live service, having raids, and yeah, they pushed out Breakpoint. After that they changed a lot of things. And now, in Breakpoint, Ubisoft is trying their NFT experiment. Breakpoint was actually in a pretty good spot. It just got a big free update with a ton of new content, basically a relaunch for the game, and then Ubisoft decides to burn all that goodwill a month or so later by turning the game into a marketplace for items with serial numbers on them that remember the owner. Like, this goes far beyond what gaming should be about. It should be about earning items in the game that stay in the game, that have no outside value, but that in the game make your character look cooler or enhance your character. I don't want to think about like money or real world other things while playing a game. And I really hope that the Diablo auction house kind of showed that. But no, we're here making the same mistakes as the gaming industry has done many times. And yeah, this will likely be for the coming years at least. Square Enix also said, hey, NFTs is the future, let's go and do something with that. So I kind of worry about those future games as well. You bet that it's going to come to Assassin's Creed one day, but I really hope that the bubble pops before that. And maybe also the news that Ubisoft has been bleeding a lot of people. A lot of senior talent has left. 5 of the top 25 people who worked on Far Cry 6 are no longer at the company. And also 12 from the top 50 that worked on Assassin's Creed Valhalla are no longer there. Low pay, an abundance of competitive opportunities, frustration at the company's creative direction, and unease at Ubisoft's handling of a workplace misconduct scandal that flared in mid-2020 are all given as reasons by a report from Axios, who talked to some developers that left there. They already announced a pay increase for their Canadian developers, so 5% up to 20% depending on your experience, and also a lot of other benefits have been implemented. So it seems like they are trying their best to keep a lot of developers. Curious if it will work out for them, and of course I really hope they focus on improving that workplace culture, which can still use a lot of work from the sounds of it. And overall, as like a fan of Ubisoft games, I'm curious if they can still surprise us, because it has been a while since we've seen that, oh my god, new IP from Ubisoft. Right now it's really, okay, we have a lot of games announced, they get delayed, so now in 2022 we already know a bunch of stuff. So I hope that they've also been cooking up some interesting next-gen only ideas, or something that we do not see coming. So hope they can still surprise us in 2022 and beyond. Curious to hear your thoughts, of course, in the comments down below. Subscribe. I will, of course, be following Ubisoft here, talk about their new games and all that stuff. A like on the video would really help me out. And don't check out my previous Sunday video about the big games that I think will be announced in 2022. You can watch it by clicking on the screen. For now, I will speak to you in the next one. Happy New Year and goodbye.